So this is the iPhone 16e, and I've been using it for about 72 hours as my main phone. And there's one feature that has really stood out to me that no other iPhone has or no other Apple hardware product has, and I want to talk about that feature today and what it means for Apple long term. Let's get into it. So this isn't a full review or anything of the 16e, definitely say subscribe because I wanted to put it through at least 2 weeks of its paces using it as my main phone to really get an idea of what it's like living with this thing, but I do want to talk about the main feature that's been a standout, and that has to be battery life, and that has to be because of that new C1 chip, and what it means for Apple moving forward, like I said. So the 16e is the first and only piece of hardware in Apple's lineup that has their brand new C1 5G modem, which is Apple's in-house 5G modem that they've been using as opposed to their Qualcomm modems that they've been using for a decade now at this point. And if you see on the speed test, I am comparing the 16e versus an iPhone 16 Pro Max, albeit they're from different carriers, so the numbers might be a little bit skewed in terms of which one's better, quote unquote. But I just wanted to show off that you do get some normal 5G speeds when you are using the 16e, and the idea here with the C1 chip is that the end consumer doesn't see any difference. Everything works as advertised, and if anything, a nice little bonus is the better battery life overall. So in the speed test, you do see that I do get some great download speeds on the 16e of 200 plus Mbps, and some very low upload speeds of about 2 or 3, versus the 16 Pro Max, I believe it's about 15 up and down for download and upload speeds, using the Qualcomm modem on the T-Mobile's network versus the C1 modem on Verizon's network. And what this has allowed is a much better battery efficiency, especially when dealing with internet over data. One of the biggest detriments to battery life is going to be using data and consuming data when you're not on Wi-Fi. If you notice, one of the biggest battery savers is to turn off 5G on something like your iPhone 16 Pro Max, because the faster the data is, the faster you're going to be using up your battery. And one thing that Apple's been able to do with this C1 modem is that the fact that it's built in-house means they've been able to make it a lot more efficient and making battery life that much better. According to Apple, their unit of measure is video playback time, so you get about 26 hours of video playback time on the 16e versus 22 hours on the regular iPhone 16, which is a pretty substantial gain when it comes to hours of battery life. But in an anecdotal kind of review, I was using this thing from Saturday morning to Sunday evening on one charge without having to plug it in, and I used it for everyday tasks like iMessage, photos, the camera application, scrolling through X, watching the occasional video, letting my daughter play with Delta Emulator, and again, I got to my battery with about 8% battery left at the end of the second day, which is battery life that I haven't seen since something like the 13 Pro Max. But to me, this is a much bigger deal than just battery life in an iPhone. I think this is actually a great foreshadow into possibly seeing 5G and data connectivity in something like Apple's MacBook lineup, especially the MacBook Air, and there are a few reasons why I do believe that. So first and foremost, the idea of MacBooks with an LTE or 5G connection isn't anything that's new. They had a prototype in 2007 which was almost ready for production, but they ended up scrapping it. Then they did it again in 2011 in a MacBook Air, but again, Steve Jobs thought that Wi-Fi was going to be the dominant way of connectivity for laptops, and also the chips back then were draining battery life like crazy. Even to this day, they are on those kind of 5G netbooks that you see on the Windows side. Another big reason why this should be happening is because Apple plans to eventually integrate their C1 modem into their A and M series chips, meaning that the iPads, which already have M series chips and already had data connectivity with Qualcomm modems, means that it would be a no-brainer to just add the C1 chip directly into something like an M4 chip, and then boom, you have data connectivity on those iPads. So I do think that iPads will be the next kind of piece of hardware that Apple integrates their C1 chip, and I do believe they're going to integrate it directly into probably the M5 chip at this point. And another big reason why is because the A series chips and the M series chips kind of have the same exact infrastructure and they're built kind of the same way, meaning that since the Qualcomm chips have been working on the A series chips, and because now we have the 16E with a C1 chip and the A18 chip, that means that this is all built to work together and it's working together well, and the iPhone 16e is a great proof of concept of not only that it works well, works as intended, but is also great for battery life overall. And again, one of the biggest reasons why we haven't seen 5G data connectivity on MacBooks is because Intel and Qualcomm modems and chips, they're just too much of a power drain. It takes way too much power to actually power these things on to get the 5G connectivity. It drains battery. It'll start to take away some of those efficiency gains when those Qualcomm and Intel chips were already built in there. And now that's why I think a C1 or probably a second version like a C2 is something that will be coming to MacBook Airs. Now you might have seen that Tim Cook already teased some sort of new Air hardware product, whether that's the MacBook Air, an iPad Air, maybe Air Power. I do not think that these will be getting a C1 chip. I mean, hopefully they do, because Fernando from the future here. It looks like they did not add the C1 chip to the M3 iPad Air. Because a MacBook Air with 5G data connectivity, I think is something that would sell immensely well and a lot of people would jump on there. But again, I do think in the future, Apple will be putting these C1 chips or C2 chips in their MacBook lineup of laptops. And I'm sure Apple's seeing what the competition is doing. For example, we already have Windows laptops like the Surface Pro 9 that has the Snapdragon X Elite chip, which is data connected already, so people can go on the internet whether or not they have Wi-Fi. And I think Apple is going to be targeting those type of people with a MacBook Air, a C1 chip, and maybe their M4 or M5 chip. And based on what Tim Cook said, new MacBook Air should be coming this week. Again, probably not with the C1 chip, but an M5 MacBook Air probably next year is when a data connected MacBook Air should be coming out. So again, the 16E's greatest superpower as of right now, again, it's only been 3 days, but the battery life has been absolutely outstanding. It lasts all day and then some, and again, I know that it's got a couple of different things from a hardware perspective helping it out. Like it doesn't have to deal with a ProMotion OLED display that has to power, it has way less nits of brightness to deal with, so there's a couple of things that are helping out from a battery efficient standpoint, but the C1 chip I think is doing a lot of the heavy lifting, and now that Apple has that proof of concept built into the iPhone 16e, and they can deal with any kinks and issues that are happening with a low volume product, putting into a much higher volume product like a MacBook Air, like the rest of their 17 Pro line later this year, or of course their M-Power iPad Pros and iPad Airs, which we should be getting sooner rather than later. But let me know in the comment down below what you think. Do you think the C1 chip coming to a MacBook Air is something that is going to come sooner rather than later? Would you pay extra for a data connected MacBook Air? How much extra would you pay? I'm always curious to know exactly what people think. iPhone would definitely get a MacBook Air that's connected to data, and I know that people can argue, hey, just hotspot from your phone, it connects very easily. Well, yes, it does connect relatively easily and it is pretty seamless. It's still not nearly as good as having data built in directly into your hardware device and not having to deal with battery drain on your iPhone, with your iPhone getting hot, because I think hotspotting to this day is still not a very efficient way to get data onto a non-data connected device. But let me know in the comment down below what you think. If you made it to the end of this video, leave a little dolphin in the comments down below. And like I said, subscribe to the channel to get some more in-depth analysis on the 16E, which I think is going to be one of Apple's best sellers long term. But if you want to watch more videos like this one, check out one of these videos right here. And until next time, I'm Fernando. Peace, everybody.